Welcome to this webinar on Benefit Issuance and Verification Special Situations. I'm Ellen Reese, a School Nutrition Program Manager here at DESE, and I'll be going over the webinar today. This webinar is designed to go beyond the basics of benefit issuance and discuss some special situations that we run into each year. I'll also include a few frequently asked questions. If you're not comfortable with the basics of benefit issuance or verification yet, I recommend watching last year's webinars on those or the e-learning modules on those prior to this webinar. First, we'll go over benefit issuance and then we'll move on to verification. The main reference for the information today is the Eligibility Manual for School Meals. If you need more information or have a special situation that isn't covered today, you can reference the Eligibility Manual. And also feel free to contact our office with any special questions or specific questions or special circumstances that you have if you need a second opinion. We'll start with benefit issuance special situations. First, a homeless child is a child who doesn't have a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. Any children who are homeless automatically qualify for free meals. To determine the eligibility of a homeless child, the homeless liaison or other designated official must provide information such as a list, letter, or email to show the child is homeless. The most common thing we see is an email from the homeless liaison, but some schools also have forms that they have developed that their homeless liaison will complete for each homeless student. The free and reduced application has a box to check if a child is homeless. If they check this box, it cannot be taken at face value. It must be confirmed by the homeless liaison. If a household indicates a child is homeless on the application, it must be confirmed through the homeless liaison or other official. If the determining official obtained documentation from the homeless liaison or homeless shelter official, then the student receives the free meal benefits. And if there's a host family who's hosting a homeless child or homeless family, meaning that they're providing financial support such as shelter, utilities, clothing, or food, they can include the homeless family on their application for free and reduced meals. The homeless family will receive free benefits if the homeless liaison confirms that they're homeless, and the household will have to certify based on their own income or case number. But the additional household members might help them qualify for a better benefit. If the host family includes the homeless family on their application, then they also need to include any income that that homeless family makes. One question we sometimes get is, when is the effective date of the free benefits for the homeless child? So when can we start the free benefits? You can either choose the date that you receive the documentation from the homeless liaison or the date that you process the documentation. So that's up to the LEA's discretion. Once homeless children are determined homeless, they will remain free for the remainder of the school year plus the 30-day carryover. Even if they're no longer homeless, they still get to keep their free benefit for that year unless they request to get changed to paid. For example, I know a couple years ago we had a major flooding and many families were displaced because of the flooding. And if they were certified as homeless, they were able to receive the free meals even when they could go back to their homes in that year. So they were able to keep that free meal benefit. The next situation is foreign exchange students. Foreign exchange students are considered members of the host family's household, so the household that they are residing with. The benefit is based on the eligibility of the household, so either by income, SNAP, or some other categorical eligibility. The next is foster children. A foster child is defined as someone that the state has legal custody of. Sometimes the foster parents are unrelated, but they could also be relatives or kinship providers. The determination of if they're considered foster is who has custody. Whatever the specific situation, if the state has custody, then the child is considered foster for the school lunch program. Informal arrangements where the children are staying with other family or friends do not qualify because the state does not have custody in those informal arrangements. Foster children are categorically eligible for free meals, so they will receive free meals regardless of the household income. There are 3 ways that eligibility of a foster child could be determined. First, they could be a match on the direct certification list. The child will be free, but remember that the foster benefits do not extend to the rest of the household, even if they're directly certified as foster. The second way is that the household could turn in an application and mark the box that the child is a foster child. And you can accept a foster application at face value, so this is different than homeless. You do not need to get additional documentation to provide benefits for the foster children, unless they're pulled for verification. And the last way to determine eligibility is if you receive documentation from the court that shows the state or court has legal custody of the child. When a household has a foster child and children who are not foster children, they can include the foster child on their application for free and reduced price meals. The foster child will be free regardless of what the other children qualify for. If they include the foster children on the application, they need to include any personal income that the foster child receives. However, they would not include payments received from a foster care agency or court for the care of the foster children. That's one of the income exclusions that's specified in the eligibility manual. An adopted child is considered a member of that household. They do not automatically qualify for benefits. They would have to qualify based on household information, such as an income application or direct certification. Again, the eligibility of an adopted child is determined based on household information. If a foster child is adopted during the school year, they still remain free for the rest of the school year, but they would need to qualify based on other household information for the next school year. And if it's a subsidized adoption, so the household receives assistance payments or subsidy for the adoption, then the assistance payments or subsidy are included as income on the free and reduced application. The next situation is a guardianship. In a legal guardianship, the state does not retain custody of the child, so they are not automatically eligible for free and reduced meals like a foster child would be. You would determine the eligibility based on the household information, such as income or categorical eligibility. Some additional things to consider when you are asked about guardianships are sometimes foster parents are referred to as guardians because they are taking care of the children. This is different than a legal guardianship because the state still has custody of foster children. So if the state has custody, the child will receive free benefits. And if the state does not have custody, then they would have to qualify in a different way. The wording on documentation that you might see for a legal guardianship will vary across the state, so each court may have their own wording. So if you have a question on the wording, if that means the state still has custody, you can contact the court for clarification. Remember, if a household turns in an application marked foster, you can accept it at face value. You aren't required to get additional information unless they were selected for verification, or if you have reason to verify for cause. The next situation is when a child is living with one parent, relative, or friend. When a child is living with one parent, relative, or friend, the child is considered to be part of the household where they are living. Generally, if the parents are divorced or separated, then the child is considered to be part of the household that has custody. In joint custody situations, a child may physically change residence regularly, so they would be considered to be part of 2 different households. If both parents apply for meal benefits, but the eligibility determination is different, the greater benefit level is used. For example, if one parent or guardian's application is approved for free meals, but the other parent or guardian's application is denied, the child would receive free meals regardless of where the child resided on any given school day. However, one parent or guardian may choose not to have the child receive free or reduced price meal benefits while residing with them. When the child is residing with this parent or guardian, the school should respect their wishes and allow the parent or guardian to pay for the meals. In this situation, the child's meals must be claimed at the paid rate when they are residing with that parent. We get quite a few questions on joint custody, so I wanted to go over a couple examples. If you have a unique situation that you need help figuring out, feel free to contact us. In this first example, Dad and Mom have joint custody. The student is on the direct certification list as SNAP with Dad's address and information listed. Mom filled out an application and her household qualified for reduced benefits. Okay, so we have this child with joint custody, so they're part of Dad's household and they're part of Mom's household. And they were directly certified as SNAP with Dad's information listed, and then Mom filled out an application and qualified for reduced. So what benefit level does this child in question receive? And the answer is free. So they'll receive free meals because they were directly certified as SNAP. So even though Mom's household was reduced, they get the greater benefit, which is the free benefit. So they'll be free. So in this same situation, now we have other children in Dad's household. So what benefit will the other children in Dad's household receive? They will also be free because the direct certification SNAP benefits extend to the other children in the household. Okay, so same situation, but we also have other children in Mom's household. Now, Mom had filled out an application that qualified them for reduced benefits. What benefit will the other children in Mom's household receive? They'll actually receive free meals because the student who was directly certified as SNAP is also part of Mom's household, and those benefits extend to the other children in that household also. So all the children in this situation would be free. This next example is a little different. Dad and Mom both have joint custody, but in this example, instead of the child who has joint custody on the direct certification list, a different child in Dad's household is on the direct certification list as SNAP. Mom filled out an application and her household qualified for reduced benefits. So we have a child that's joint custody, so they're in both Dad's household and Mom's household. And then we have a student in Dad's household who is directly certified as SNAP. So the other children in Dad's household automatically qualify for free meals because there was a child with SNAP. So what about the child in question who is joint custody, so part of Dad's household and also part of Mom's household? What benefit does this child receive? They will receive free meals since they are in the same household as someone who has SNAP because they are also part of Dad's household. So then what benefit will the other children in Mom's household receive? They'll receive reduced benefits since they had an application approved for reduced, and the child who is on SNAP is not part of their household. So the benefits extended to the child who is in the joint custody situation because they are part of Dad's household, but it doesn't extend to Mom's household because the person with SNAP is not part of Mom's household. So I have one last joint custody example. In this example, Dad applied and was denied benefits, and Mom's household was approved for reduced benefits. So what benefit will the child in the joint custody situation receive? They will receive reduced benefits. They get whichever benefit is greater. So since Mom's household is reduced, they can receive reduced. Then what benefit will the other children in Dad's household receive? They will receive paid. So that the child in the joint custody situation will be reduced, but the other kids in Dad's household will be paid because the reduced benefit does not extend to them. So then, taking this example a step further, what do you do if Mom wants to receive the benefits, but Dad doesn't? So in this case, the child would be paid when he or she is residing with Dad, but they would be reduced when he or she is residing with Mom. So they would have two different benefit levels depending on where they are residing at the time. So they'd be paid when they're living with Dad because he didn't want the benefits, but they'd still be reduced when they're living with Mom since she did want those benefits. The next special situation is multiple families living in the same house. A household is a group of people who may be related or not, who are living as one economic unit. So generally, those living in the same house are considered to be one household. However, there are situations where those living in the same house are separate economic units, so they would be considered separate households. An economic unit is a group of people whose members share housing, significant income, and expenses. If multiple families or individuals are living in the same house, but prorating expenses such as paying rent, paying for their share of utilities, and buying their own food, so that they're not economically dependent on the other family, then they would be considered separate households even if they were living in the same house. So that takes us to the next situation, which is a child paying room and board. A child paying room and board is usually only paying a very small amount and not prorating expenses. They are usually financially dependent on the rest of the household, so they would be considered part of the household they live with in most situations. For an emancipated child, if the child is living as a separate economic unit or living alone, then they are considered a household of one. If the child lives alone or in a household without any adult members, then the emancipated child will sign the application, but they are not required to put any portion of their Social Security number on the application. And just as a reminder, if the child is living with a relative or friend and they're economically dependent on whomever they're living with, then they are considered to be part of that household and not considered a household of one. Unemployment is considered income and should be included on the application. I know with COVID-19, we're seeing more situations where employees are furloughed. This is information we received from our regional office during the federal employee furlough. So the question here is, can households of furloughed employees be approved for free or reduced price school meal benefits? And should they be removed from the program when the furlough is over? And this is the answer we received. The income eligibility guidelines for free and reduced price school meals are based on annual income. While there is no prohibition on households with furloughed employees applying for benefits during a furlough, school food authorities should manage the application process in a manner which reflects their unique circumstances. During the furlough period, these households may not have information on the duration of the furlough or its ultimate impact on the household income. So what they're saying is the eligibility guidelines are really supposed to reflect the annual income, And if employees are furloughed, they'll be making less money during the furlough, but they'll start making more income when the furlough is over. And some furloughed employees won't make that money back, but some might receive back pay. And households may not know how the furlough will impact the annual income. So they may not know how long the furlough lasts or if they'll be furloughed again. So they can go ahead and apply for meals based on their current circumstances. And then the answer goes on to say, therefore, it is reasonable for SFAs to remind households that free or reduced price eligibility is intended to reflect actual annual income. School districts should urge any families who are approved for free or reduced price meals based on their reduced income during a furlough period to terminate their free or reduced price status should the economic hardship they had anticipated due to the furlough be remedied by a return to work and/or restoration of pay for the furlough period. So households can still apply for benefits, and the school district cannot automatically remove their benefit or require them to reapply when the furlough is over, but they should urge them to let the district know when they're no longer furloughed and able to pay for school meals again. And then it finishes, in addition, families should be made aware that if they are selected for verification later in the school year, they will be required to produce documentation of actual income for the application month. School districts may choose to verify applications for cause if they have specific information indicating that the information on the application is not accurate. So furloughed employees can apply for free or reduced price school benefits and not be treated any different due to the status. So they can fill out an application during the furlough or any time of the year, just like any other household. Free or reduced price school meal benefits are eligible for the entire year. So once a child is approved for free and reduced price meals, those benefits remain in effect for the entire school year. This isn't any different for furloughed employees. They will remain on approved benefits unless the household requests that the benefits be removed or changed. And here's another question. Should they be removed from the program when the furlough is over? They should not be targeted or treated any differently due to status. The LEA has the discretion to verify for cause due to a known household status. Otherwise, these households should not be targeted. The LEA could send a general reminder to all households that free or reduced price eligibility is intended to reflect actual annual income. Seasonal workers make more money in some months than other months, so the current month's income won't give a good representation of their actual financial circumstances. Because of this, the household can project an annual income and report that as their current income. If the prior year's income is an accurate projection of the current year's income, it can be used. If the prior year's income is an accurate projection of the current year's income, then they can use the prior year's income. Sometimes seasonal workers, such as school employees, can choose to have their salaries paid over the entire year or paid over a shorter time. So to treat these employees the same, you should determine the full amount available on an annual basis. Remember, when a household completes an application, you can take it at face value that that is what they are earning. If you have knowledge that what the household is reporting is incorrect, you can verify for cause. Like seasonal workers, if someone is self-employed, they can use their previous year's income to project their current year's income, unless the current income is a more accurate measure. For self-employed, they will report the net income from self-employment. For example, for a farming income, you'd subtract the farming expenses from the gross receipts. If the household has income from self-employment and income from wages, they should be listed separately. If the income from self-employment is negative, it should be listed as 0. If they're losing income on their self-employment, they can't subtract that loss out of their other income. So it would just be considered 0, not negative. Income from rental properties is treated similar to the treatment of self-employment income. So they'll report the net rental income and can use the previous year's income to project the current year's if it is accurate. Next, I wanted to talk a little bit about the SNAP and TANF case numbers. A SNAP or TANF case number in Missouri is a 10-digit number with the first 2 digits being zeros. And this is also referred to as the Household's Department Case Number, or DCN. When the Department of Social Services, or DSS, uses the case number, the first 2 zeros don't matter. Sometimes when DSS provides information on the case number to the household, the 8-digit number without the first 2 zeros may be provided. Numbers that are not acceptable are the 16-digit Electronic Benefit Transfer, or EBT number, and Medicaid numbers are also not acceptable for free benefits in Missouri. A Medicaid number is actually the same format as a SNAP and TANF number in Missouri, and if the household has both Medicaid and SNAP or TANF, the case number for the household is the same for all programs. And because of this, you wouldn't be able to tell on an application if the case number was only for Medicaid. But if the household asks if they can provide you their Medicaid number, then you would not be able to accept that. Or if they indicate that it's a Medicaid number instead of a SNAP or TANF number, you would not be able to accept that. Remember, if the case number is in the correct format on the application, you can accept that at face value. However, if the household does not appear on the direct certification list, the LEA should contact the household for further information or verify the application for cause. You could also contact the local food stamp office to confirm the case number. We occasionally get questions on if LEAs can accept SNAP or TANF numbers from other states, so I wanted to address that. If a household says they are SNAP in another state during the month that they're applying, they can put that case number on the application. However, the determining official is required to make sure that that format is correct. So you must contact that other state to find out if the case number that the household provided is in the correct format. Since you're contacting them anyway, you could go ahead and confirm that the household had benefits during the month they applied for. Another way to confirm the correct format is to ask the household if they have documentation from that other state showing the case number. In the next few slides, we'll go over some questions we've received about benefits. The first question is, if a household starts earning more money, do they need to complete a new application? The answer is no. Once a household is certified as eligible, that eligibility remains in effect for the entire school year and for the 30-day carryover for the next school year. Households are not required to report changes in their circumstances. So if their income increases, or if they were homeless and they're no longer homeless, or they are no longer receiving SNAP benefits, they don't need to report it, and they can still keep their eligibility. However, if the household wants to decrease or remove their benefits because their circumstance changed, they can do that at any time during the year. They will need to request the reduction of benefits in writing, and this could be by submitting a new application. And then, of course, if the household has a change in circumstances, that means they are now eligible for benefits or better benefits, they can reapply at any time during the school year. For example, if they have a decrease in income, they can reapply at any time and report their current income to see if they would qualify for free or reduced price meals. Now, if a household was selected for verification and did not adequately respond to verification, then their benefits would be removed, but it wouldn't be removed just because they had a change in circumstances. Households were able to apply for a pandemic electronic benefit over the summer, and they were qualified for this benefit if they qualified for free or reduced price meals. So that leads to this next question. If a household received the Pandemic Electronic Benefit Transfer, or PEBT, do they automatically qualify for free or reduced price meals this year? And the answer to that is no. They will not automatically qualify for the 2021 school year, so they must apply for free and reduced price meals separately, or they must be directly certified. During COVID-19, there have been some questions about disclosing free and reduced price information. One example is if community members or organizations have offered to donate money or gift cards to help households that qualify for free or reduced price meals, can a school share which students qualify? The answer is no, not without parental consent. Student eligibility is confidential and disclosure requirements still remain in place. These disclosure requirements are found in the eligibility manual. If you get this request, instead of providing eligibility information, you could send a communication to households letting them know that they could take advantage of the opportunity if they want to self-disclose, and the household could provide their notification of benefits directly to the organization. Another question we've received on disclosure is, can the school district share free and reduced price information for a local education program to provide extra educational benefits to students who qualify for free or reduced meals? Again, this cannot be provided without parental consent. Eligibility information cannot be shared with local education programs unless parental consent is obtained. We do have a form in our free and reduced price information handbook that you can use to ask for parental consent for sharing information with other programs, and the link is provided here. Now we're going to go over some verification situations to keep in mind. If you're not very familiar with verification yet, I'd recommend watching the verification webinars from last year and also watching the Serving with Success e-learning modules available on our website. So the first verification question is just to remind you of the normal time frame for the documents. So the question is, what time frame must documents be from for verification? Documentation may be provided from 1 month prior to application up through the current time that they're required to respond to verification. Documentation may be provided from any point in time between the month prior to application up through the current time that they're required to respond to the verification. The next question is, when can tax forms be used for verification? You're not always allowed to use tax forms because they reflect income from the previous year, and verification documentation must be from the current year. However, if you remember when we talked about seasonal workers and self-employment being able to use the previous year's income to project the current year's income, because of that, you can use their tax forms to verify seasonal and self-employment income. If they have other income, then the tax forms, if they have other income in addition to the seasonal or self-employment work, then the tax forms could not be used to verify that income, but it would be able to be used to verify just the seasonal or self-employment work. You would need documents from the current time frame to verify their other income sources. For seasonal work, you'll need to use the gross income from the tax forms, but for self-employment, you'll use net income. The next few slides go through how you can use tax forms to calculate farm or self-employment income from tax forms. This is just for self-employment, not for seasonal work, because this shows you how to calculate the net income. But for seasonal work, you'd need to take the gross income from the tax forms. And again, income from other sources must be treated separately and verified with documentation from the current year, not from the tax forms. This goes over the farm employment. So you'll take any capital gains from the 1040 form and then other gains, rent, royalties, and farm income from the Schedule 1 form. If the number is negative, then it is considered zero income and cannot be used to offset any other income. This goes over the self-employed or business income. You'll take the capital gains from the 1040 form, and then other gains, rent, royalties, and business income from the Schedule 1 form. Again, if the number is negative, then it is considered zero income and cannot be used to offset other income. The next question is, because of COVID-19, our school year started later than usual, so the 30-day carryover of benefits ends after October 1st. Do I include applications from last year for verification? So for verification, to determine which applications to verify and how many to verify, you count your applications as of October 1st. But if your 30-day carryover ends after October 1st, some students will still have benefits based on the application they filled out from last school year. So how do you handle this? Do you include those applications from last year in this year's verification? The answer is no. If the 30-day carryover of benefits is still in effect as of October 1st, applications approved from the previous year are not included in the sample pool. Only applications received during the current school year are subject to verification. When you count your applications to determine how many to verify, you won't include last year's applications in your count of applications. And when you fill out your verification report, you won't include last year's applications in the count of applications. This may result in you getting a warning on the verification report that the number of free and reduced eligible don't match the number on your October claim. And if the reasoning is because of the 30-day carryover, then you'll just explain this in the comments of the verification report. This answer also applies if your 30-day carryover ends after October 1st for another reason, such as because you have a 4-day school week. Any applications that you receive after October 1st will not be subject to the regular verification schedule, but if you have reason to question any of these applications, you should verify them for cause. Verification must be completed by November 15th every year. November 15th is on a Sunday this year, so when does verification need to be completed? Well, the regulations are that verification must be completed no later than November 15th of each school year. So if you're not going to be mailing letters out over the weekend, then you'll want to make sure that you complete verification by Friday, November 13th this year. You can request an extension if you have extenuating circumstances that will prevent you from completing verification by the 15th, but if you plan now, you should be able to meet the deadline. Because of COVID, you'll likely see more unemployment income on applications. So what documents should be provided to verify unemployment compensation? They should provide a notice of eligibility form from the State Employment Security Office or their unemployment check stub. Then the last question we'll go over today is, what do you do if a student shows up on the direct certification list during the verification process? So on October 1st, they were certified based on an application and were selected for verification. Then sometime between October 1st and November 15th, they showed up on the direct certification list before they sent you any documents for their verification. If this happens, then verification is considered complete because you received information verifying that they should be free. You do not need to select a replacement application. On the verification report, the student should be reported in section 5-8 as responded. That concludes this webinar on benefit issuance and verification special situations. Feel free to contact me or the nutrition program specialist in your region if you have any questions. Thanks for participating today.